So a lot of what Carrie just went over and covered, that's basically what my team does at the Missouri Geological Survey. So I'm going to kind of go in a little detail on the mine waste portion of that and how we became involved with that. USGS has a Earth MRI program, or Earth Mapping Resources Initiative program. They have multiple parts of that, like you saw, geophysics, the mapping, kind of large-scale reconnaissance projects, and then they, in the last few years, because of the bill funding from the previous administration, decided to throw in mine waste. Only Geological Surveys can apply for this funding. It's the only part that's actually competitive with USGS on Earth MRI side of things. They only fund a limited number of these things a year. They love the term move the needle on waste pile deposits. So thankfully for Missouri, we actually have several of those that actually kind of qualify in size for those. And to even really be considered for review or funding, you need to have access to the site to begin with. And we've been very fortunate enough with private industry to get that access to work on some of these sites. A little stats there: in 4 years, you can see there's not a lot of things that got funded. There was 13 for the GIS side of things, the inventory, characterization, only funded a handful of those a year. So we're actually the only surveyor right now that for 4 years in a row got a project funded with USGS. So I kind of like that feather in our hat, so to speak. It's given us over $800,000 in funding so far those 4 years. They're overlapping projects. They're 2 years each, roughly, to get that work done each of these sites. A little bit on the mine waste inventory. That's a GIS database that USGS developed to put all of our mine waste information we have as a state into. It is not as simple as it looks on this diagram, just being a bunch of points on the map. It is very much, to quote my colleague, a GIS review of literature, where we have all of these locations documented, the polygons created, and a lot of information that's basically shoved in them from not only historical topographic maps we have, but also just using LiDAR and other aerial imagery we can find to then find these polygons or find these locations, verify they are what they are, and then make a database of them. So like there on the left, you see a topographic map that has waste piles or things noted on it. And on the right, you can actually see where you can see that from imagery, that waste site there, and how we can make a polygon essentially of that site. And all that data then gets fed into this very robust, elaborate database. It has point location, polygon data. It has the geology at the site, which will vary from site to site depending on what they mine, what resources we could find to support that, and what references. So everything we've noted in there has to be cited like a research paper, and all those sources we use have to then be sent along to USGS. So it's very much a digital library of information we are then sending to them for them to have for their national data set. And like Carrie had said, we end up having almost 1,800 records. We do by far have more than everyone else in the country because we've had a lot of historic mining in Missouri. And that leads us to get opportunities to do a lot of field work that a lot of other states don't. And we're kind of very much, I'd say, leading the forefront on that for the nation as Missouri. Another shot there showing a lot of fields entered, a lot of data. It takes a lot of time. Hats off to Elizabeth for plowing through this and getting this done for our office. She worked her tail off for a couple of years getting that done. So I will say, though, this is based off of when they had the critical mineral list before, where it had 50 instead of 60. So we're going to look at going through all these records again and updating them and changing them how we need to change them and update them to the new list at some point here in the near future. To kind of get more looking at what the field side of things are for all the field projects we have, it's very much getting out in the field, walking the property, digging holes there, collecting samples. All of our field processes follow USGS's guidelines that they gave us before we even started submitting proposals several years ago, to where they wanted sampling done a specific way with specific equipment and certain types of sampling. So it's 1 day in the field training with them, following all their guidelines, and then getting kind of like quizzed in the field to make sure we do how to do it. And then just kind of going from there each site and kind of adapting our fieldwork processes and what we got to do. At the photo there on the left is actually core that we sampled at P Ridge. We were fortunate enough there that the owner had done his own kind of drilling on the tailings, so we were able to just go through his sample boxes there and kind of resample for our project to kind of add a different, I guess, layer of data to that to get some more depth. Unlike the previous photo and there on the right, we're digging holes, getting down the material, and then covering those holes back up when we're done. Wearing PPE, and also between every hole we dig, we're also sanitizing the equipment to reduce any contamination that goes on between where we sample and collect the material. The other additional thing we did that was only unique to the first project that I'll talk a little about at P Ridge is we actually had to send off ore samples too for that project, which they ended up removing that criteria for every other year. So for P Ridge, we actually did collect 10 samples of ore to send off for that project as well to get some analysis. But once we get the material back to the lab, we have a little facility at our office where we will then start sieving the material to kind of get all the other organic side of it, to get it down to kind of more of a homogeneous format to it, so it all looks the same, and just basically pouring it through a sieve and scraping it through. And then we will then split it and have a amount that we'll send off to USGS to get sent to them. They want roughly 1 to 2 kilograms of sample material per site we collect at, and then we keep a portion of it for further analysis if necessary on our end, because everything we send to USGS, it's for them to not only analyze and provide us with geochemistry, but they're building their own mine waste repository for all the states that are sending them material that they collect in the field. The first location we did in 2023 that we got funding for, we started and completed, was P Ridge. For us, it was easy one to get access to it in a very short amount of time, and we were able to collect a lot of samples of the site. We broke up the main tailings area into multiple grids that we're actually able to walk on and get access to. That's what all those little composite samples are. Those are areas that they wanted a arbitrary size to, where you would collect at least 30 small samples in that area and then basically merge into one large sample to send off. So so we get one data point for 30 locations in that area as a kind of average of that area. We also collected grab samples, which was digging just a random hole in an area and then collecting a large amount of material in that one location. And then we had core samples in the pink there. We picked to try to get a spread through the whole pile to get kind of more linear and vertical data through the pile. And then the red is at the head frame where we collected ore samples there at the site. I kind of oversold the amount of sampling to be done on the site. So after getting saturation coverage of the main pile, I went around to a lot of other small areas or older waste piles on location to try to get more data there to see if there'd be any variability in those waste piles compared to what was the main body there at P Ridge. So that's why there's a lot of triangles or a lot of locations outside of the main area. There's a lot of material over the site. Second one we got funding for, like Carrie said, was old lead belt. These are chap piles, are not tailings, so they're kind of like mounded over and capped as something else unique for us to go after. Historic lead mining area, so we're going to be looking to see if what lead and zinc are still in the tailings or in the chap piles, and then see what else may pop up, like nickel or copper or cobalt, see what may show up there. We have a few results back so far. We're getting more and more sampling done to get the rest sent off to USGS for analysis. The third one we got funding for was Iron Mountain. It's a formation where this mine is compared to P Ridge is a little bit different in how iron deposits formed in Missouri. Unique thing about it is, though, the apatites are there, or the phosphates there, seem to have a similar appearance to them as P Ridge, which may lead us to believe there could also be rare earths there, possibly similar to P Ridge. But it has kind of an unknown factor to it, so we looked at something to have as comparable to see what might be different in waste piles between these two IOA deposits. It's had a long historic mining period for it. They had variable areas they mined at, so there might be a lot more variability in the waste area for us to look at compared to what we saw at Pea Ridge. And then last to join the mine waste project family in our office this year is Indian Creek. It's kind of its own little sub-district up there on the top right graphic. This one is a little more unique in itself, that it's not just where they mine lead, but there's also, from documentation, known there's copper to exist there and quite possibly nickel and cobalt. So that'll be interesting for us to kind of get into and look at to see what may actually show up in the geochemistry once we get the project rolling. Yeah, that's our fourth one. And also last year we got flown by USGS a hyperspectral survey. I worked with our fellow survey partners in Oklahoma after one of our Earth MRI workshops to talk to USGS's hyperspectral rep that does kind of more site flying instead of whole like state flying out west. He was very interested in Pea Ridge, but they had reservations about flying it due to what they could see. So I sold them on what if we flew more sites instead of just one in one go. And we decided to pick Tar Creek there on the left in Tri-State Mining District in Oklahoma, Pea Ridge in the middle, and then also our old lead belt area of interest on the right. And they instantly jumped on it and were ready to want to fly it and do it. So we have comparisons between M&T waste and IOA IOCG mine waste sites and to see what will show up on that data. We just got that data last month, so we're starting to look through it to see what we can kind of figure out and use. And we have multiple other projects going on in the vicinity of some of these, so we can use this data set not just for these projects, but for other ones we have going on. Big thank you to access holders of mine waste sites, Caldera Holding, the Doe Run Company, New Frontier Materials. Without them, we could not do any of these projects to even get any data of any kind of this. A big thank you to S&T for writing letters of support. That's very instrumental in us getting the proposal funded. When you have a strong partner who's willing to back you on these to go help you get more projects for your office. And to my team, my name is on all these grants, but I by no means know anything on these sites enough to say I know it all or I do all the work myself. So I have an amazing team that supports me and helps us get this work done. It helps us write proposals that keep getting funded, to help keep getting more information for us to provide to industry, to maybe get something done about these places, to get some more critical minerals, not only for just Missouri, but also for strategic purposes for the country. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Maybe time for a quick question. Yoshiko?
Thank you very much for your talk. I was just wondering whether you
Yep.
do any studies on how the tailings change during weathering, like over time. Is that the kind of thing that you study as well?
We have, and I know USGS has looked a little bit into that on, I believe in, it would be the tri-state area in like Tar Creek. They've done some studies. We have not. Our goal really is just to kind of get some modern geochemistry for them for this database. All those samples we collect will then have all their information put into that GIS database for the corresponding sites. But we have not looked at that, how weather would affect it. I will say, at least when I've seen at Pea Ridge, weathering does affect what you see at the surface. You see some other additional mineralization kind of pop out in some areas that there would have maybe a lot of water runoff going through, which is kind of interesting to see. But we've typically dug down further through all that to get below the weathered kind of surface to get a more true sample of that spot where we're sampling. So.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle.